Chicken here, bringing you another Boom Beach video. In today's video, guys, we're going over some of the best tips and tricks and strategies that you can use to get, no, that's not what we're doing. We're going over some of the best Scorcher strategies that we can use for the Mega Crab. And the chicken got a little bit carried away there, but guys, but that's going to be okay. So, number one, the easiest, the most standard, that is going to be your 3-5 Scorcher and tanks. Now, I say this is the standard because this is generally the loadout of Scorchers that you want to have with your tanks. And typically you want to use bullet with energy drink. That's the safest one. That's the one where if it's kind of a toss-up and you're like, I don't know what hero to bring bullet and energy drink and you're probably going to be fine. So, now this is a little bit controversial because a lot of people like to... We gotta turn that down a bit, holy jeez. A lot of people like to think or say that 4-4 Scorcher tanks is the most optimal. Now, that's not true. That is 100% incorrect. The most optimal way to use Scorchers and tanks is to have a little bit more tanks than Scorchers because you need that damage. And if you don't have that damage from the tanks in the back, then your Scorchers are just going to flame out and die. So, that's for standard bases. That's for that's just kind of a generic troop combination of using Scorchers and tanks. Now, using 4-4 Scorchers and tanks, that's where the base has a ton of splash damage, has a ton of rocket launchers, a ton of mortars, has a ton of machine guns. You have to be careful with machine guns because with enough boost behind them, they will rip the Scorchers to shreds if you're not careful. So those are the main things you have to look out for, but that's when we're talking 4-4. When you're talking 3-5, the biggest thing is just keeping the Scorchers alive. You're going to have enough tanks in the back that they're not going to go anywhere as long as you're keeping those Scorchers up and decently healthy. Now, when you switch over to 4-4, that's like what we just said, is when, that's when you want to use, or that's when you're going up against a base that has a ton of splash damage and you're not too worried about, your troops taking a little bit longer to get to the core or the HQ. And the whole idea is that the Scorchers are going to be okay to sit there longer and be able to absorb that damage, and you're also able to absorb more of the splash damage and keep it away from the tanks. And just keep it aimed on the Scorchers is the whole idea there. So that's basically... That's the difference between using 3-5 and 4-4. But overall, I would say 3-5 is better because you get that little bit of extra damage. Chicken just got back from the gym, guys, so we were sweating and the glasses were fogging up, but we'll throw the bad boys on now. There we go. Okay, so so that's 3-5. That's 4-4. Now, what we're going over next is going to be 5-4 Scorchers and tanks. Now, I actually used this quite a bit on the last Mega Crab, and I feel like this is where it's going to be even more optimal here. On this next, on the Scorcher Mega Crab, obviously, because we're going to have a lot of Scorcher boosts going on, so that's going to be very, it's going to be more beneficial to have the extra Scorcher. And the thing about, when you go 5-3 Scorchers to tanks, you have to be very sure that you're not going to be facing boom cannons, doom cannons, shock blasters, things like that. That's the biggest thing you have to look out for when you start bringing in more Scorchers and having less tanks. Chicken looks like we got googly eyes here, but the glasses are fogging up. I actually can't friggin... I can't see in those things, guys. It's like... the humidity is insane today, so... So yeah, that's the biggest thing when you're bringing in those extra Scorchers. You have to make sure that they're not going to get frozen, they're not going to get shocked to death, they're not going to get pegged constantly with doom cannons, boom cannons, or grapplers, or things like that. Grapplers are really the biggest nightmare for Scorchers and tanks. That's like primarily the biggest thing you gotta look out for. So we don't know if the Mega Crab is going to be bringing in a Scorcher damage boost or some sort of secondary Scorcher boost to the health boost we already have on the tribes. So if it doesn't, if it just stays the Scorcher health boost, I would stay away from using all Scorchers like this. One, it's 80 GBE just to throw them out, which is a ton of gunboat energy. And if you're facing things like shock launchers, if you're facing things like boom cannons, especially right close to the beach, or grapplers, things like that that are just going to slow down, stop, or do a ton of damage to your Scorchers, you typically don't want to use all Scorchers. It's not going to work. You're just going to get shut down right at the beach, even if you're thinking like, oh, it's a Scorcher Mega Crab. Like I'm just gonna use all Scorchers, and it's typically not a great strategy, especially now that we just lost the shock duration tribe. So we're spending a little bit more GB than we've been used to over the past couple of weeks. So for that reason alone, yeah, I wouldn't use all Scorchers because it's not really, like, unless the boosts are massive, it's not really a good option. So aside from tanks and Scorchers, what else can you put behind Scorchers, you guys are thinking? So not really anything. You can't really use anything behind the Scorchers. Now we're going to try some Riflemen here, but it doesn't typically ever work. Especially, you have to be very, very careful on the beach if you're going to try something kind of crazy like this. We will bust out the shock knuckles for sure, but it just doesn't work. You'll see right here. I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to try to clear the beach with the Scorchers, and it's going to be very difficult because we got to get them off the beach first. Because if I throw the Riflemen down right now, they're just going to stand in all those flags and just get completely destroyed by any sort of residual splash damage. So now we're getting to the point where I can start to think about throwing down the Riflemen. So we're going to do just that here in a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go like this. I'm going to shock that. I'm going to shock that rocket launcher. I'm going to take this one down, and then we're going to go like this right here. And we're just trying to take down any splash damage that's going to be focusing in on our Riflemen there. And as soon as bullet turns, actually, we're going to go ahead and use the shock knuckles right here. That's going to keep those machine guns down. But, I mean, it's very, very tricky to use, because you see even there, they will stand right with the Scorchers for the most part. They don't really stand behind them very well. So even though that there is this Rifleman damage bonus tribe, they're a very difficult troop. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Nothing's ever impossible in Boom Beach, but very, very tricky to use. Very, very tricky to use. Very high skill cap for using Scorchers and Riflemen, just because of how close they're going to stand together. So definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, other than that, like I said, the biggest, your best bet is going to be 3-5 or 4-4 Scorchers and tanks. It also depends on your statues, right? Let's talk about statues for a minute. So, you're going to need minimum. You're going to need minimum 2 gunboat energy statues, especially if you're doing any hits unboosted, because it takes 80 GBE to launch all the Scorchers, right? So, when you mix them up with tanks a little bit, you're only left with like 30 or 40 GBE if you only have the 2 gunboat energy statues. So, in terms of a general statue guideline, I would say to try to have at least 3 if you're not gonna be boosting. If you are gonna be full boosting, then you can get away with 2 for sure. It's just not as optimal as having 3 would be. So at least 2 or 3 gunboat energy statues, and if you're really serious about using Scorchers and tanks, I would go with 4 troop health statues, because the armored units, they're really, really going to benefit from that troop health. It really does make a massive difference, especially for things like the Mega Crab, where troop health in general is typically a better idea than going on heavily gunboat energy or troop damage. Now, that's specifically for the Scorcher-CRAB. I'm not talking about the Mega Crab in general. Of course, you can go heavy gunboat energy. You can have operation statues where it's mostly gunboat energy and mostly troop damage and be fine. But other than that, heavy troop health, heavy troop damage. I think what I have is perfect for Scorchers and tanks, and that's 4 troop health, 4 troop damage, and 2 gunboat energy statues. I think that's really going to be your best bet if you are serious about using these armored units for pushing up on the Mega Crab. So guys, thank you so much for watching. That is going to wrap it up for the video today. Let me know down below in the comments what you think the best way to use Scorchers and tanks is, and what your plan is for the Mega Crab. Are you going to be pushing? Are you going to be taking it easy? Let me know that down below in the comments, guys. Let's get a boom surprise out here, and let's go ahead and load up let's load up the microwave, just for fun. So guys, that is going to wrap up the video today. Make sure to leave a like if you found it interesting, entertaining, or informative, and we'll see you next one, guys. Check it out.